Everyone. All right. Thank you. This event and the reception is masked or optional. You'll see me often in a mask because I have a 6-week-old grandson. And this new thing going around. But anyway, everybody's welcome. I'm Judith Englert. I'm Chancellor of Temple University, and I have this great honor of welcoming everybody to the campus to celebrate a rich history of the relationships between Philadelphia and Italy, and also to celebrate this great volume, the Italian legacy in Philadelphia. We at Temple are especially delighted to host this event because, among other things, this book is published by Temple University Press, so that makes it really special to us. And also, we are very proud because we have had a campus in Rome on the Tiber for over 50 years. So we have an outstanding panel to discuss the Italian legacy book and relations between Italy and Philadelphia. But before I introduce the panel, I also want to say that we have an outstanding audience here today. And I'd like to, at the risk of missing people, because everybody here deserves to be introduced, I'll just mention a few people with very special relations to this book or to Italy and the Italian legacy. Raise your hand if when I call your name, but please, no applause, and you'll have an opportunity to talk to each other and to panel members at the reception following this. So, representing Temple University of Rome, we have Amelia Aquina, and she's our Dean of Temple Rome and interim Vice Provost for Global Engagement. And we also have with us, again, representing Temple Rome, the Chair of the Board of Visitors for Temple Rome, John Ryan. So John's here. And we have one of our great trustees, Sandy Harmon Weiss, Temple University trustee, very supportive. Another trustee who's going to be here, many of you know her, Senator Tina Tartaglione. She called me this morning her wheelchair, and she's stranded on the second floor, was left in expect. So she sends her love and great respect to everybody. And also Patrick O'Connor, who are great supporters of Temple Rome, our former chairman of the board and longtime board member. He sends his regards to everyone. Death, a family very dear to him. I do want to recognize the Temple University deans who are here. Joe Lucia, Dean of the Temple Libraries, David Boardman, Dean of Media and Communications, James Davis, and some people are late, going to be here late, so may not be here yet. Dean of Education and Human Development, and John Mediaci, Dean of Podiatric Medicine. We also have a number of people who are going to be attending, and they may not come till later, but I do want to recognize them. Ali Husman, I don't think Ali is here. Great to have you here, and a great friend of higher education, and of course, president of Rowan University in New Jersey. Great institution at Temple. Guido Piccini, Guido here, there we go. A longtime chairman of the Pennsylvania State System Board of Governors and member of the Council of Trustees of Kutztown University. Great to have you here. Joseph Giacomini. I don't know if Joseph is here yet, but he's previous chairman of the board of Drexel and previous chair, vice chair of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and Michelle Masucci, who's here, and there she is back. She's vice chancellor for research and economic development for the University System of Maryland. We also here at Temple, and all of us really value our relationships with the city of Philadelphia. So it's great that Michael DeBardiz is here. Michael, where are you? There you are. Former managing director for the city of Philadelphia, deputy mayor, and commissioner of Parks and Recreation. And we also have current Congress director for the city of Philadelphia, Ann Nagel, and she's here. So Philadelphia city government is well represented. Also with us are Robert DiPiazzi. Robert, are you here yet? Chair of the New Jersey Italian Heritage Commission. Probably would be here for the session. John Padova, he's here yet, senior United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. And we also have the Executive Director of the U.S. Semi-Quincentennial Commission and President of Philly Tops, Frank Giordano. And the amazing thing about Frank Giordano is today's his birthday. He wants to we also have, in addition to the people on the panel, some authors of some of the chapters of the book. Gilda Battaglia, Roro Olderasari. I don't know if Gilda's here yet. Pietro Brasica. There it is. Guido, thank you. Pietro, thank you for being here. Jeremy Good is a chapter author. Albert Dury and Chris Williams Sanchirico. And so the main thing is the reception. You can talk to all these people. So it's great. I am now honored to recognize the Italian Consul General for Philadelphia, Christina Meli, who will bring us greetings from Italy.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Domenic. I guess many of you know me already. I've been here for 12 months, Andrea, and I'm a good friend of Andrea's. I couldn't miss this occasion. Also, I could not say no to Chancellor Englert, so we are very good friends for a good example. And this is really a strong connection, and it's also a personal connection. So Andrea and I, we crossed paths many ways. Because while I was in Rome, we started a career together in the same Directorate General of Europe for Europe. And then we intersected, I think, into Washington, where I spent many years in New York. And then the first person I told when I was appointed to Philadelphia was Andrea. And so I asked Andrea, how's the city? And a New Yorker, I had no idea, I must say. And Andrea was so kind and also made me a great pictures of the city. And I said, okay, I'm coming. So to thank Andrea for this, welcoming me in the city. I want to reciprocate his contact to the city where he has very good friends. And also for the Temple University, fun fact, my husband was in the Temple last week for a conference in the buy something in the science and whatever it would be. And I said, well, bring my regards. I'm sure he didn't. So, but I'm happy to meet you here for the first time, and next time I'm in Rome, I will be happy to join you. Just a quick remarks on the book. The book was on my desk the second week I was in Philadelphia, and that was also a very welcoming gift because I had a chance to understand many things I had no idea. And also, I think many people in Philadelphia have no idea as well. So it is a book that is well done and it was useful. for me and for many other people. And the fact that I like is that not only it talks about the legacy of experience at Philadelphia, but also of the ideas, and the ideas connect us with the future, and the future connects us with the higher education that at Temple and in all the institutions here in the city we appreciate so much. And so this connection has the strength to become even stronger and in the future. And that's what we do at the Consulate General, and I think Andrea does very well. We try to connect our countries, our cities, our people, our young people, especially the students, especially the entrepreneurs, especially everyone who has an interest in our culture, in our culture, but also in our economic life. So this is just to say that we not only have to cherish what the Italians have done so far, but also to continue this strong relationship among us. And with that said, I will leave to the real discussion of the book. I thank all the people that contributed to the book, that wrote so deeply, and let me open this chapter of my life in this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council General. Thank you for everything you do for the relationship between Italy and Philadelphia. The plan for today is to have a panel session until 3:30, followed by a reception, soon be upstairs in the fourth floor. In the interest of time, I'm just going to very briefly introduce the members of the panel, and they will speak one after the other, so we don't take a lot of time in introductions. And of course, there'll be time at the reception for you to interact with everybody here. Our first speaker needs no introduction. Here from Italy is Ambassador Andrea Canepari, a beloved friend of Philadelphia when he served as Consul General. He is both co-editor of the book and author of sections on the history of the Consulate General in Philadelphia and Ciao, Philadelphia. He will be followed by the co-editor of the book, Judith Goode. She's now retired as a Temple professor and former head of anthropology and urban studies. She also authored chapters on South Philadelphia, Italian gastronomy, and Temple's Italian connection. Next after her will be Inga Saffron, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and architecture critic with the Philadelphia Inquirer. And she authored a chapter on the Italian influence on bricks and mortar around the city. She will be followed by Bill Valerio, who is the Patricia Van Berg Allison Director and CEO of the Woodmere Art Museum in Philadelphia. He wrote about the Italian artists of Philadelphia. Finally, we wanted to have a commentator who wasn't involved in the book. And so we reached out to Domenic Vitiello, a professor of city planning and urban studies at the University of Pennsylvania. His new book is called The Sanctuary City, Immigrant, Refugee, and Receiving Communities in Post-Industrial Philadelphia. It's open access and free to download. And then following Professor Vitiello's comments, I will invite questions if time remains from the audience. So if you have any questions, otherwise the reception will be a great time. So let's get right to it. I'm pleased to turn the microphone over to Ambassador Andrea Canepari.
Buonasera, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Chancellor Englert. Thank you not only for organizing, hosting this event, but for your friendship. I'd like to thank all of the panelists, but actually everybody in this room. I think we share the stories, relationship, and we work together. Of course, First of all, the first one I met, I think, in this room comes from General Mele, Cristiana. Thank you for being here. But with everybody else, I think in Philadelphia, we forged a relationship with creative things. And it was really a pleasure meeting you. I actually wrote all your names to be recognized and alliance about which we did, but my wife, Roberta, urged me, well, then the presentation will be about talking about all your friends, and we will do it. I get to thank Roberta not only for that, but also for helping me in creating these initiatives, because it was really a family also project. She helped me in Philadelphia, helped me in the Dominican Republic, and I'm extremely thankful for her insights and help. Why are we here? I was mentioning this personal relationship, the love we share with many of you, because this book was also a labor of love. I mean, we work, and I mean me and Judith Goode, since 2016, and of course it was a pandemic, but it was a tough project. I mean, we had to take care of several dimensions of the love affair between Italy and Philadelphia's region. And so it needed a lot of serious investigation and serious stuff. So thank you again for being here. When I arrived in Philadelphia, I saw so many Italian aspects in everyday life, in monuments, food, and stories. And all this story should have been put somewhere, should have been remembered, and the answer was this book. It's not just something past, something finished. With Dean Zanchina, we created an exhibit in Rome, in the Temple campus, with students about the picture of this book. So the book is still alive. But why are we? This is actually Vitiello. So it's the peak of building, and they put on top in October, my first year in Philadelphia, Italian Council celebrate chocolate. And why did they do that? Because there is this big Italian dimension in this, and I felt a little bit like an archaeologist. I was digging to find Italian relations connection in order to create a building to the futures. But if you want to go to the future, you have to remember your past, where you're coming from, your awareness, but not only Italian pride, but Philadelphia pride as well. So as an archaeologist, I was finding different aspects. And what I found, this was not something dead in the jungle, but actually something very alive. And what I saw, it was Judy and I edited and put it in the book. That's what also Italy. So this is two pages article on Corriere della Sera, the most important Italian newspaper, that recognized what is Philadelphia, from Rocky to Botticelli, Italian Philadelphia. The deputy director of the most important Italian newspaper came here and wrote 2 pages about what is the city, the Italian lives, what we can do together. And that's his illustration. It's not a longer of the book, because you see Italian cars, DNA, Rocky, of course, but the joint is being so immigrants and monuments on the Delaware River, of course, Gino's parts and all that stuff. Everything together. We had, of course, we started with
Ciao, Philadelphia, a city enriched in culture, art, and creativity. Sister city to Florence, known for its art and architecture as the birthplace of Renaissance artists. Philadelphia hosts a colorful.
Go to the next, and then the beautiful Longwood Garden. The Pen Museum with the Basilica style facade. And something that Inga Saffron actually helped us to find, a bridge of sights, a copy near 8th Street, near Market, and nobody knew about that. Then the cathedral, which is similar to, was inspired by an Italian church in Rome, the P&A with Italian music, Italian events, the Pen Museum with Italian events. Other videos are still nice, you can still enjoy it, this video. That was our logo.
The birthplace of the United States of America, Philadelphia is a city deeply connected to Italian values and the Italian way of life. Ciao Philadelphia invites you to explore the outdoors, touch the sun, and breathe in what the city has to offer. Friendly people, delicious foods, with a host of events throughout the area focused on anything and everything Italian. Murals stretch the landscape as people fill the streets of lively entertainment. Ciao Philadelphia welcomes you to be a part of the ever-evolving Italian influence.
And then Italian cast, Simeone Foundation. Italian origin musicians. Rocky, of course, well, that's the Italian market. Rocky. Eddie Lang, we had the inauguration with Richard, who is here today. The Union League, SEPTA, even SEPTA was one of our sponsors, and we had a tour at Independence School with the Rangers, so Italy was sponsor for the educational program. So that was easy, not so much, but it's clear that there is big Italian footprint in the city, and that was important. But if you dig a little bit more, you find here a temple, the Provost Lecture with Highland Eye, that exposed the combination of science, music, and spectacles. Because we have a lot of Italian scientists creating connection. And the university created a lot of these activities. Here with and Patrick, another event with the Bronze Professor here at Temple Campus, the Mountain Museum event with Learshman at Rowan with the big Italian community. And so Drexel, so many universities wanted to be part of that. And we are here, even in another book edited by Temple Press, there is a recognition of what the Italian Council did together with Press to create bridges and forge opportunities for the city. And this is our list of events, a sponsor, everybody was there from American Online, Ottoman, and so many. And after all this recognition, there are opportunities. The first transatlantic degree in medicine that allows people to graduate in both continents and be able to practice medicine in Italy and in the US, between Policlinico Gemelli, Università Cattolica in Italy, and Jefferson here in the US. So we saw so many opportunities, what this bridge is created. And the project is part of a long journey that I started. That's my first book about the Italian legacy in Washington, D.C. And in the cover, you see some similarity with today's book cover. It's another painting of the Michelangelo of the Capitol, Romini, Costantino Romini, painted the dome of Capitol Hill in Washington. And the book started with a conversation with then speaker, Nancy Pelosi, speaker, let's see in the next few days, if she will change her job, but well, you will see, we are surprised, maybe, but she told us, you have to make a book and tell the story, and we did, that's the forward of Nancy. And then I followed with these footsteps and published another book in the Dominican Republic, again at home. That's an inspiration of St. Peter's Church in Italy. And it's the presidential palace of the Dominican Republic, president. So that they have a symbol of the state. See, they have the copy of the door. So Italy is in the heart of that country as well. And it was edited also here by St. Joseph University Press. And then we have the comics in the Dominican Republic, 240,000 printed copy of this comics distributed thanks to the most important Dominican paper there from Italian origin. So you see, there is also these books, these projects can help creating stories that create opportunities. And that's what we wanted to do with this great, amazing group of contributors of the book. We have some of them here in this room, and I'm really thankful to them because we worked since 2016 to craft chapters jointly with Judy, and in order to put the right pictures, in order to highlight what was the Italian connection between Philadelphia and Italy, with a high level of seriousnness that the love that I had and that everybody has for Italy compelled me and compelled us to make a serious and beautiful project, and I hope we were able to do. So thank you so much for being here, for your friendship, for having helped us to create living bridges between Italy and Philadelphia. Thank you so much.
Whichever class.
And I forgot to mention that's one of my great
Hi, Mike. Now that you've seen the visuals, you know that in many ways, the great connector of Philadelphia and Italy, the great collector of authors and pictures, got me into this project, which has been a real joy. Andrea, it has really been an experience. And what I'm going to have to do is talk about boring text. So no visuals from me. But instead, I'm going to talk about how a northeastern US girl who loves Italy, but who loves Philadelphia as well, met another booster of Philadelphia in Andrea, and how this worked out. I have been working on sociocultural differences in cities in the United States, and mostly on the way boundaries form in cities, the way groups ally and conflict. And so this was a way of using my ability to frame Philadelphia and Andrea's great connection facility. It's an amazing facility for connection. My first project had been on Italian food. It was a gateway to studying how ethnic boundaries form and are maintained. But then I went on to study other groups in Philadelphia, but Philadelphia always was the context. And I began to study the big picture of Philadelphia, thanks to scholars in this room who do a lot of wonderful work on the political economy history of Philadelphia. And so there were a lot of bridges between us and ways that we could complement each other. Our vision for the book was to create an accessible volume, one that would grab people and mostly tell stories, but would still have something to say to scholars, something new to say. It was a tall order, as it turned out. It sounded simple, but in order to avoid stereotypes and oversimplicity, we ended up with a huge variety of evidence and a huge variety of disciplinary expertise. For example, there were people who were looking at Italy, Italy-Philadelphia relationships through the lens of the actors and agents who made the connections and the interactions between people. There were people looking at institutions and how they had developed over time. And there were people looking at individuals embedded in households and local communities who were bringing Italy to Philadelphia. There were people who had worked up close and personal with communities and individuals, people who had done life histories of individuals and people who were doing histories of communities. So there were a wide variety of diversity in the techniques of research, the nature of the evidence. And so in addition to the visuals, there was an awful lot of variety. And these things we tried to sort of keep hidden. We didn't want to be didactic. We didn't want to be inaccessible. We didn't want to lecture. And that's why I'm lecturing to you today. And it is sort of running throughout the book. We were addressing the book to multiple audiences. We were trying to talk to Philadelphians in general, as well as to academics in specific literature. And we were dealing with two different places that themselves were different. We were dealing at the beginning with two young republics forming out of very different backgrounds historically and having relationships with each other, mostly state-to-state relationships, and later institution-to-institution relationships. But the individual relationships and relationships between people are those mostly between elites, between prominente and the American public, because the other voices and the other relationships are hidden in time. But as we get closer to the present, we get much more of a view of the actors, and the actions that get taken, and the different agents who create the Philadelphia community and its relationships to Italy. So our two young republics mostly communicated to each other through text, through letter writing in one chapter, through book reading in the chapter on Palladian architecture, and through the travel of diplomats mostly. And I urge all of you to read Andrea's article on the history of the consul generals in Philadelphia, because it really shows you the variety of diplomats, the different regions they represented, all representing different governmental practices. Some were kingdoms, some had titled people, others were republics to begin with. So you're dealing with a different time, a different Italy, and the kind of connections are very, very different. In the next period, we see a growing metropolis which looks to Europe for taste and civilization. They look to Europe at the classic both cultures and at the Renaissance cultures to improve their understanding of the world. And so we're dealing here with the Grand Tour We're dealing with the changes in the Grand Tour as it moves from a period in which the new sort of intellectuals of America went to Italy to learn about Italian arts and culture. And at the end, you're getting a lot of consuming families, as in Lisa Coletta's article about expatriate Americans in Italy, who are mostly consuming for conspicuous consumption and for maintaining their status in Philadelphia. So you're getting a totally different set of contexts and actors behaving in different ways. And we're getting the development of the institutions at the same time, which were increasingly trying to incorporate the larger public. We're trying to make the uplifting the Philadelphia population by developing the institutions, the museums, the kind of not to be too praised fairs. One of the things I really love about this section is the development of the institutions in Italy that were helping to broker purchases of Italian art objects. The institutions here, like the fairs that were bringing culture to Philadelphia. One article which compares the different ways that images formed in the Centennial at the fair, and compares that to the 1926 150th year celebration, in which Philadelphia was in a very different place and Italy was in a very different place, and the whole representation of each to each other turned out to be very different. So there are a lot of examples of change in Italy, change in the US, and the ways in which these changes affected what was happening. And then, of course, as we get, the third section deals with something that doesn't happen in all big American cities. It isn't necessarily going to be a good comparative case, but it will be for certain cities. Like, speaking of Nancy Pelosi, in San Francisco, the whole migration stream from Italy to the US came from different regions, developed differently in the context of a developing city in the West. And, you know, it doesn't compare in a cookie cutter way to the development of relationships in the United States, in Philadelphia, I'm sorry. No, Philadelphia is not the United States or in Florida. This particularity is what is so interesting, I think, about the book. Anyway, this is a case study of a particular place in which a community forms. And that's an interesting point as well. Richard Giuliani, who's the sort of premier historian of the formation of the Italian community in Philadelphia, had pointed out that the original settlement here was from Liguria and occurred earlier than the mass immigration that so many of us know from books and stories. And that is what formed the community, the institutions, the churches, the market, the entrepreneurs. And so that is, it's a very different picture. Then we go through a period of no man's land, which is, I consider it, because we go through a long period in which Italy and the United States are cut off by war and depression, and yet they weren't cut off. So one of the things I'm curious about is what, in fact, were the relationships at that time. We could not incorporate them. We could not go in this direction. We were trying to deal with a huge area of knowledge, and it was very hard to tame it. But the book raises questions about future research and gaps during that period. The branded city that we live in today is a much easier city to see, and yet it provides us with too much information. We have to weed it out to get a narrative for it. And so the book ends with the branded city in which deindustrialized cities are trying to save themselves through very similar ways of developing service economies, more trade and commerce, and luring businesses and their headquarters to the city, as well as luring tourists from abroad. And in order to do that, you need food, architecture, and music. And here again, Italians and Italian culture play a tremendous role. And agents are moving back and forth. Italian companies invest in Philadelphia. Philadelphia companies invest in Italy. We have a whole sort of unencompassable but interesting circulation and flow of people, graduate students to Temple and Penn and Drexel, and scientists who move back and forth. The theme of medical practice and the relationships between this is a city, after all, of eds and beds, of higher ed and medical education. And this scene that the circulation of Italians and Italian people and capital and so on is a really important part of the city. The last section probably could be a book in and of itself. So we followed the evidence. It was smaller in some areas than others. We are really proud of what we were able to say about the colonial period, even though it is so invisible, but the people are so invisible. In the end, we tried to incorporate high culture and the increasing focus on popular culture that America has experienced. In food in particular, Italian food is important in high culture and the popular symbols of the city. And so we tried to look at vantage points and at people and at actors and at agents located all over the social map and see how they connected. And as I said, if I had more time, I would talk about the gaps. Fortunately, there are gaps, and they do provide a fruitful future for examining these things.
Thank you, Judith and Andrea and everyone for being here. It's wonderful to see so many people and so many names that I know and see you in real life. I'm Inga Saffron and I write about architecture for the Philadelphia Inquirer. It was something like 8 years ago that Ambassador Canepari first told me about his plan to put together a book about Philadelphia's Italian legacy. As soon as he described it, I knew that it was a great idea. Philadelphia is the product of many ethnic groups, but Italians have put their stamp on the city and its culture in so many visible and unforgettable ways. And this is especially true when it comes to architecture and the environment, my specialty. The book, as you heard, took a while to come together, and in the intervening years, we saw a growing public debate about one high-profile emblem of Italian heritage, Christopher Columbus. And this, of course, isn't the place to get into the issue, but while we as a nation continue to reassess his legacy, it seems equally important to me that we find another way to honor the Italian contribution to American history. And the good part is, monuments to Italian culture and achievement already exist all around us. You just have to know where to look. They say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Both Philadelphia is full of copies of great architecture of the Italian peninsula. Rome has an enormous dome temple, and So is Philadelphia. It's the Franklin Institute. The Pantheon in Rome was built in the 2nd century AD. Philadelphia didn't open its Pantheon until 17 centuries later, designed by John Wyndham to honor a great Philadelphia hero, the multi-hyphenate printer, journalist, inventor, statesman, Ben Franklin. Florence has the formidable 15th century Strozzi Palace, which was built by the Medici family's fierce rival, Filippo Strozzi the Elder. Philadelphia has its own version of the Strozzi Palace, built in 1925 by the financier Edward T. Stotesbury as the headquarters for the powerful banking house Drexel & Co. And there are several interesting similarities between these two buildings. Strozzi died before he could occupy the palace, and the Medici managed to get their hands on it. Stotesbury's tenure in Drexel's Philadelphia headquarters was cut short by the Great Depression. Fortunately, both works of architecture survived the loss of their patrons, and Philadelphia's Palazzo still dominates the corner of 15th and Walnut Street. Florence had the Great Synagogue. It was one of the first important Jewish temples built after the walls of the Sweet Ghetto was torn down in 1840. And it was given an especially lavish treatment as a way for Jews in Italy to celebrate their new legal status. The interior was magnificently decorated with stylized Moorish and Byzantine details, which hark back to a golden age of Jewish culture. Well, Philadelphia's Rodin Shalom took its inspiration from that famous Italian synagogue, especially in the decoration of its interior. Designed by the architects Simon and Simon in the 1920s, its soaring dome and walls are beautifully hand stenciled with stylized vines, leaves, medallions. And the windows, instead, are the work of Philadelphia's great Italian-born glass artist, Nicola Descenzo. This, as you've heard before, is famous for the Bridge of Sighs, the small covered bridge over a canal that links the Doge's palace to the prison. It got its name from Lord Byron, who imagined the prisoners sighing as they took their final glimpse of Venice's turquoise lagoon before being thrown into their cells. Well, Philadelphia has a similar but more prosaic covered bridge, and it links the former Lit Brothers department store on Market Street to the building that served as its warehouse. Instead of gondolas and canals, drawbridge clerks took in views of the traffic along Filbert Street as they shuttled cartons of goods back and forth across the bridge. Seems very American to me that we treat a sprawling department store like an Italian palace. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating to compare the design details of these two works of architecture. The Venetian span is built from the milky white Istrian stone. Philadelphia's architects, Castor and Stern, designed their bridge using the most traditional of Philadelphia materials, red brick. And instead of carved heads that reference Roman mythology, there are keystones and pediments that reference Pennsylvania's colonial geography and history. Castor and Stern used an iconic Italian work of architecture as their starting point, and then they thoroughly Americanized it. These examples are all literal copies of Italian architecture. But of course, Philadelphia abounds with architecture that uses the classical vocabulary of ancient Rome to create something distinctly American. They similarly mix columns, pediments, and domes to suit their needs. And you can imagine that the old Jacob Reed men's store on Chestnut Street shows its distinguished Tuscan design as a way of connecting their clothing to Italian tradition of fine tailoring. American architecture has never been pure. We like to borrow, to mix and match. We see elements of Roman architecture matched together with Greek or Spanish. But it's hard to imagine how Philadelphia's fine buildings could have been constructed, whatever their style or antecedents, without the skill of Italian craftspeople who emigrated to Philadelphia. Italian excelled at brickwork, stone carving, plasterwork, stained glass. You can see one restored example in the lobby of the Divine Lorraine on North Broad Street, and another on the famous RCA Tower in Camden by, again, Descenzo. Even today, people of Italian descent dominate those building trades in Philadelphia. My contribution to the book includes essays and buildings that were built by Italian immigrants to serve Italians in Philadelphia. You see many of them in South Philadelphia, like the immigrant bank buildings that punctuate the corners of South 7th Street. They were built by enterprising Italian business people to help newcomers save up to buy homes here and send money back to their families in Italy. There are many churches, of course, like St. Mary Magdalene de Pazzi, which could resemble any number of Italian village churches. But there are also really interesting original works of architecture that so thoroughly blend American and Italian cultural elements that they create something completely new. And this is my absolute favorite, Our Lady of Loretto, a modern church in Southwest Philadelphia. I mean, I guess modern, I think it's the 30s, but it manages to combine references to modern aviation, biblical stories, Italian folktales, all in this streamlined Maduro style. It was designed by an Italian architect, Frank Grillo. This is a quick survey, and I hope it gives you some sense of just how many monuments to Italian culture exist in Philadelphia. There's so many examples, far more than can be shown in this short program. You can buy the book. But there's one thing we know: without these architectural contributions, Philadelphia would be a much less beautiful city. Thank you very much.
I also want to say thank you and describe how much I enjoyed the project of writing a chapter about the Italian artists of Philadelphia. My name is Valerio, and I run the Woodmere Art Museum, which is dedicated to Philadelphia's art and artists. And Woodmere was founded as a collecting institution, the idea that Woodmere would be constantly building a collection of art. And this project gave me the opportunity to look at our collection just from a very particular lens, like all the Italians, and say, you know, how does this tell a story? And I enjoyed it, and I'm going to take you on the brief version of it. Italian Italy is, of course, the place of all wonderful things. Art being central to that, and art being a deep part of Italian sense of identity. And so, of course, it's no surprise at all that Italian artists, Italian American artists in Philadelphia are constantly looking at examples of Italian art. And I just pulled two out really quickly. Larry Day, who was born Lorenzo del Giorno, he was born in North Philadelphia. His parents changed his name at his baptism. But I was actually quite proud to be Lorenzo del Giorno. He went to Tyler School of Art, which is, of course, the great art school of Temple University, and then moved so fast. And he's learning how to draw by examining and redrawing a beautiful print from the 17th century by the artist Prima Ticcio. And it's an obscure story in the life of Hercules, where he gets dressed as a woman, and of course, it's the most exciting episode in the life of Hercules to today's audiences. But this was something that for Larry Day was a journey back into the craft of draftsmanship, and he found it in the history of Italian art, which he was so much drawn to. And then just on another end of the spectrum, Italian American artists not only look at the great old masters, but they look at 20th century art. And I'm showing a work by an artist named Joe Amoratico, his large space dream. These are, by the way, all works of art in Woodmere's collection that I'm showing you. Joe Amoratico's large space dream is very much inspired by the great metaphysical artist of 20th century Italy, Giorgio de Chirico. And so you can see how he takes these these are actually two figures made out of boxes and architectural forms that are sort of married to each other in Joe Amoratico's work. So there are as many relationships to, between individual artists, Italian American artists, and the history of Italian art as there are artists. But the story that I want to tell is very much about the intertwinement of artists as people with institutions and schools especially. And that really, to me, as I was looking at this material, came to be the story of Italian artists in Philadelphia. It has everything to do with the development of schools, the change in the equilibrium of social relationships between Italian populations and the institutions of arts and learning in our city. The first Italian-American artist that I can find is Giacinto Riboni, and this is a detail you're seeing on your left, the young woman looking at a mirror from 1836, and I'm showing Riboni together with Constantino Brumidi. These two artists have very much the same story. They come to Philadelphia in the first half of the 19th century. They are educated people who have attended, academies. Riboni attended the National Art Academy in Rome. He worked as a professional artist in Rome for 10 years, came to Philadelphia. He came to Philadelphia in 1828, looking for work. He heard that Philadelphia was a growing city. There were rich people here who needed portraits, and he made a good career for himself as an artist working in Philadelphia. And it's very much a similar story of Brumidi, who we've seen already, who did the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And in between his different projects in Washington, he was working on the Cathedral of St. Peter and Paul here in Philadelphia. And I have to say, if you haven't read Barbara Willanen's chapter in the book about Brumidi and the Washington, Philadelphia, it's a really good, really interesting chapter in the book. And I learned actually quite a bit that I didn't know, which I'm always happy about. So these are artists, early in the 20th century who are educated, who've been to the academy, and they come to Philadelphia looking for work. Now that's a very different story in the later part of the 19th century, when artists are coming to Philadelphia as immigrants. Their families leaving the trauma of terrible economic circumstances, especially in the south of Italy in the 19th century. We've already seen Congregation Rodef Shalom by Nicola DeCenzo, who comes to Philadelphia at the age of 11 with his parents. They're immigrants. He's had a little bit of training in the stained glass arts in Italy. He gets a job during the day in the building trades, attends classes at night, can afford to go to school properly. But he takes classes at night at the Museum School for the Industrial Arts, and then starts his own shop. And this is a shop that ends up being one of the biggest decorative arts shops in the United States of America. He not only does Congregation Rodef Shalom here in Philadelphia, but the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. And he gets the enormous contract to decorate all of the horn and part arts, food ornaments all across the country. And I'm showing a detail of the horn and part art window that we have now on Woodmere and did Chestnut Street, or an art art. But in both the shows, it's an example of somebody who comes to Philadelphia as a kid with his family, and so is the great Harry Bertoia, who may be, one of the great Italian American artists of 20th century American art. I'm showing his reinterpretation of plant forms at Woodmere. Bertoia, like DiCenzo, he comes to Philadelphia as a teenager with his family. They're immigrants. They have very little money. They go to Detroit, where he has an older brother working in the automobile industry factories. He has kind of a passion for the arts. He goes to Cranbrook. He makes friends with Florence Knoll, comes to Philadelphia to work with Florence Knoll outside of the city in Valley, Pennsylvania. He makes so much money on the Bertoia chair, which becomes kind of a famous icon across America, that he can devote the rest of his career to making art and sculpture. And I'm showing the free interpretation of plant forms now at Woodmere, commissioned by the city of Philadelphia for the Old Convention Center, which is in West Philadelphia. Now, Italian institutions to support artists had a beginning in 1931, when artists like Severo Antonelli, and I'm showing his portrait of Mussolini. Severo Antonelli was a photographer, again, came to Philadelphia as a kid with his family, but was fascinated by Italian futurism, went back and forth between Italy and Philadelphia in the 1920s. Got the attention of Il Duce, he made an official portrait of Il Duce, but very soon after that, that trip to Italy, came back to the United States and stayed here and never went back. Antonelli started the Antonelli Photography Studio in Glenside, Pennsylvania. But what's important here is Severo Antonelli, then Badura, together with the Papali brothers, who were artists who had a frame shop in South Philly on Passyunk Avenue, founded a social club that they called the Da Vinci Art Alliance in 1930. And that very quickly became a social hub for Italians who were interested in the arts or who were artists, and they created an exhibition space. And so a lot of the artists whose work you're going to see had their first exhibitions at the Da Vinci Art Alliance. And this is the first institution that I know that's supporting Italian artists and giving them a place to show their work. And then family can be that structure, and we couldn't talk about Italian American artists without talking about the Martino Commercial Design Studios, which was one-stop shopping for all your art needs. And so they did graphic design, advertising, art for home decor, interior design, sign painting, and fine art in any color you want. And this was directly from their advertising. The members of the Martino family were Antonio, Giovanni, Filomena, Guillermo, Alberto, Ernesto Francesco, Edmondo. And the next generation, that Nina and Ava. Nina Martino is still a working artist in Philadelphia today. I'm showing her a vacant lot. Antonio Martino became an extremely famous Impressionist painter whose work is part of what we call American Impressionism more broadly across America. The first US-born Italian-American artist that I know of who gives us the pattern is again somebody very much associated with Temple University, and that's Raphael Sabatini, born in the United States, went to the school district of Philadelphia Public Schools, which had an excellent art program, which it no longer has, but through public school systems, got a scholarship to go to art high school, and then Temple University, Tyler School of Art on scholarship. He then, went to Italy, connected with avant-garde artists in there. And then, aside from then teaching at Tyler School of Art, Sabatini, for many decades, is the president of the Philadelphia Art Alliance on Rittenhouse Square. And when Woodmere became, in 1940, the museum dedicated to collecting Philadelphia's art artists, the Art Alliance was Woodmere's sister institution dedicated to exhibit Philadelphia's art and artists. So they were found, or they were these missions were formed by the same groups of Philadelphians that wanted to see the city's arts move forward. And, Sabatini is incredibly important for, again, creating a cultural anchor for Italian artists. I'm also showing the NW Air building. He did the architectural sculpture that you can see when you walk around Washington Square. The Pinto family, it's one of the great dynasties in the arts of Philadelphia. We've already talked a little bit about Jodi Pinto, but again, these are Jodi Pinto's uncles, Salvatore and Biagio, and her father, Angelo, are taken under the arm of Albert Barnes. He's kind of a wild card in the arts of Philadelphia. He sees them in Philadelphia public school classes that have come to the Barnes Foundations and said, these three brothers really have something. And he takes them under their wing, he sends them to the south of France to work with Matisse. This is a painting by Salvatore Pinto that he made on the beach in Nice with Matisse. And they, of course, then inspired their next generation artists. Artists also come up through the public schools, become important teachers in Philadelphia. Filomena della Ripa in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s at the Leiter School of Art, was an important teacher and inspiration to many artists. And Peter Paone, again, who's one of the, still to this day, I think, one of the great senior spokespeople and kind of grandfathers in the arts for so many young students. I'm coming to the end here. Anthony Visco, a third generation Italian American, the Italian American artists working today are not coming from marginalized cultural traditions. They've attended all the fine schools that we would want to. Anthony Visco is, again, I wanted to sort of tie back to Brumidi and this idea of architectural decoration. Anthony Visco worked in Philadelphia is probably the lead maker of arts for churches around the world. He works for the Vatican on a regular basis. You have to reserve this time, a decade in advance. This is a work that we have at Woodmere. It's a fragment that he really loved that was preparatory for the Church of St. Rita in Cascia in South Philly, and then Mariel Capana, Rocky's Riverboat and Teepees, and again, an example of Italian American artists exploring their experience as American artists in America today. Thank you.
I don't have any slides, but again, my name is Domenic Vitiello. I'm a professor of urban studies and city planning at Penn. I moved here with my parents. I was one in 1974 because my father went to teach at Temple for 30-some years. That's the exact number. And taught as much as he could in Rome, or in alum of Temple. So thank you so much, Chancellor Englert, Chancellor Canepari, and Judy, who's in many ways for me as a scholar of migration in the migrant communities over the last 20 years in Philadelphia. Judy's work has been really a fundamental inspiration. Also people like Carolyn Adams and others in the urban studies and geography department are really important for me, shaping my thinking here. This city. As I said, or as you said, right? I'm mainly a scholar of migration, and so I want to reflect largely on the migration, particularly, but not only of people. A thread that runs throughout this book. We've heard wonderful discussions and illustrations of the threads that run through the book on the arts, architecture, many other important topics. And I think the migration thread too makes really rich and substantial contributions to the history of immigration in Philadelphia and the United States. So from page 1, right, Council Canepari, you're in your prologue, right? You're exploring what for those of us who've studied the migration history of the United States or British colonies in particular, before it's the United States, find a really familiar and important history of connecting places through migration, right? As Count Joseph Novara, Consul General of the Republic of Genoa, works for William Morris and Company, some obscure merchant house. No, this is the premier merchant house in Philadelphia and arguably America at this point, run by the merchants who financed the American War of Independence, if you know him, Robert Morris, and had really profound effects on the region's ties with ports throughout the Americas, Europe, other parts of the world. The migration of merchants really to a great extent defined Philadelphia's very place in the world, not just the world economy, but also shaping so much of the intense transnational cultural exchange, intellectual influences, and also the other people's migration that are all really major themes of this book, explored in really great depth and detail across different chapters. So many of the chapters in this book do such a wonderful job of illuminating how ideas and cultural practices migrated. We got a lovely illustration of that already from my co-panelists. But in the first section of the book, right, Maurizio Lasagna's chapter on merchant Joseph Goode and his friendship with Thomas Jefferson, right, illustrates this. The next chapter by Captain Croce on Jesuit and migrant educators and their major contributions, right, to the growth of American higher education in this region and so many regions. You know, you can identify with Jesuit universities, right? You know, that's a big story. That it's following migrants, right? Particular groups of migrants. We learn about different types of migrants and migration, and their different influences on Philadelphia and its ties to Italy in each chapter. Most of the essays in part 2 on the expanding industrial metropolis also detail how ideas and practices of arts and culture migrated from Italy to Philadelphia, as Judy discussed as well in her review. And then in part 3, right, of the book, late 19th, early 20th century, we get to the period of greater migration of people from mainly southern Italy to Philadelphia. But the book, right, doesn't just tell the usual well-known stories about this era. Judy also writes, as she noted, right, about the earlier Ligurian migrant community. And Jeff Cohen, another architectural historian, reminds us, drawing on Richard Giuliani, that Italians did not concentrate in South Philadelphia before the 1870s. I'll say something about that at the end of the moment. Jeff and Judy's chapters at the start, part 3, on the built environment and on how South Philadelphia became known as Italian, do a really nice job of synthesizing a great deal that other scholars of Italian Philadelphia, including Giuliani, Stefano Bocconi, Richard Barbero, and many others, have written about the mass migration of the late 19th and early 20th century. And this, of course, is when Philadelphia became one of the foremost centers of Italian settlement in the Americas. Yeah, San Francisco's, New Orleans, but Philadelphia and New York, it was so much larger, right? I really appreciate how these chapters in part 3 and others capture the diverse and intense transnational relationships between Philadelphia and Italy. From the agents of Philadelphia industries who went to recruit Italians to work in the city, to really rich cultural gastronomic connections. And I'm also reminded of really, again, how intense the back and forth migration of especially Italian men. We're talking about the majority of Italian men in the late 19th and early 20th century. Went back and forth, didn't just come here and settle and live the rest of their lives here, right? This back and forth migration, right, which is a much more normal and accurate way to understand how migration happens historically, especially for Italians, but not only for Italians, that are more typical sort of imagination of, oh, he migrated from there to here, and that's your story, right? So, for example, just from my own family history, on the ship manifest that records my great-grandparents and their 3 oldest children's arrival at Ellis Island in 1905, from Bosco Reale, which is a town on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, right next to Pompeii. The column that lists whether they had been to the United States before is just so crowded with dates, it's hard to read. And it shows that my great grandfather, Alfonso Vitiello, like close to 60% of Italian men in the late 19th and early 20th century returned to Italy multiple times, went back and forth and spent just a few years. He came to the US in 1899, 1901, 1903, and then with my great grandmother, Maria Vitiello, and their first child, my great uncle Luigi, in 1904. All before they moved permanently with the rest of the family to New York in 1905. And in this pattern, my ancestors were entirely typical of Italian migrants in this era. And this moving back and forth, right, and all of the movements of things people brought with them, goods, capital, ideas that came with this, created such intense relationships between places and communities in Italy, especially some. And the US, and especially Philadelphia and New York and nearby parts of the Northeast, right? Because this is really where Italian immigrants are concentrated overwhelmingly. And one reason it's important that this book is about Philadelphia. And as Italian descendants still do live in these regions overwhelmingly. If you look at a map of ancestry in the 21st century in the United States, it shows this very persistent concentration. And part 4 of this book about the present illuminates really beautifully so many ways that these connections remain alive today. Finally, I want to say that another really important contribution that this book makes that some people really briefly alluded to is that it's not just a history of Philadelphia, but it talks quite broadly in important ways about the region. Different chapters take us to Ambler, the truck gardens of South Jersey, farms and towns of Vineland and Bridgeton, the internment camps in Gloucester City, New Jersey, outside of Glassboro, New Jersey, that held Italians who had not naturalized as U.S. citizens by World War II. Right? In this section 4, I just want to call out 2 more chapters. Right, the migration thread continues in really important ways in Salvatore Mangione's chapter, which documents the really little studied migration of medical professionals. This is so crucial to the health and economy of Greater Philadelphia in the late 20th and 21st centuries. That's obvious to all of you. And it's such a big, and I think in migration scholarship, and I'm just a really overlooked part of the post-1965 immigration, what we call new immigration to the US. And finally, and not unrelated, I really just want to celebrate one more chapter that I think just does such a wonderful job of tracing the intimate relationships between people and institutions in Philadelphia and Italy. And that's Judy's chapter on Temple and Rome. So thank you so much for including me in this event, and I'll turn it back to Chancellor Englert.
Let's hear it one more time for a great hand. All the important people at Temple, the staff who put all this together, tell me there's no time for questions. However, this is the big one question. Does anybody have a question? And then I can say we had audience participation. Does anyone have a question that they want to ask at all? Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to get ready to move on. I found every bit of it just absolutely incredible. And full disclosure, my wife is her parents born as let me end up by saying I want to thank everybody who participated in the planning for this event and the reception. I'm talking about Joe Ruschetz and his team. I'm talking about Betsy Lebrun Tuttleman and her team, Angela Hoban and her team, Joanne Epps, Sean Starosta, and Bill Wilkinson. And those are just a few, because this kind of thing only happens if we truly take a village. So I want to thank everybody for everything. Thank you for a great panel. You'll have an opportunity to interact with each other and with the panel and with other chapter authors in a few minutes. We're going up to the 4th floor. We're going to exit that way. However, at the reception, there will be an opportunity for you to get both purchase the volume and to get signed by any of the authors. And I find that one is at home, one is needed at work. One is also needed in the car because as you drive around the building. So it really should be great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Little drawers, like. Yes, come on up here.
Yes.
Because our campus is there. $3.
The new class did it, and I was like, you know. Introduction to the city.
Pretty fucking be on racking one for Kristen for my sister. Come on up. The elevators are down.
Yes, we know we have.
Yes.
And I know it's what. It's just. So, talking about. They couldn't tell you on the web. Just now.
I know that. Totally right. I know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Quick turnaround like that. Could you make? Yeah, I think I was. Are you?